Hey guys, it's Mr. Mac and I'm back with a brand new video. Who knew? So we're going to be creating this cool birch tree, silver birch scene using various bits and bobs. Let's get into it. So to make this we are going to need some masking tape. I've got a couple of different sizes here. We're going to need to grab a pencil very briefly just to draw the horizon in a minute. I'm using this little watercolour set that I got from, I think I got it from Tiger, a little cheap shop. But it's actually a reasonable set of watercolours. You could use acrylics or ready mixed paint though, or even watercolour pencils or anything really that you can splash some colour in the background. It's up to you. I've got a little water brush, I've got a few of them there. They're just a little plastic brush that's got water in it, but just a normal brush with a pot of water is absolutely fine. Little cloth. And yeah, it should be good to go for the first section. So I'm starting off by just drawing the horizon line. I have to remember when I'm doing these videos to draw these lines a bit darker so you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, that's basically all you need the pencil for. Just a little quick horizon line. It doesn't have to be a straight line to make it some little rolly hills. That'd be nice. Then we can start masking off our trees. So I've grabbed my bigger masking tape because I'm going to do a tree in the foreground to start with. Things in the foreground closer to the camera are obviously going to be bigger than things that are further away. You can see I'm rubbing my masking tape on the table there, and that's just to take some of the sticky off. My table's a little bit fluffy, so it works quite well. And you can see I'm just sort of trying to lay the masking tape out so that what is going to be the trees are spread apart in a nice little composition, all slightly angled, and on the right hand side those last two I just made sure that they were overlapping each other just to create a slightly more interesting effect on that side. At this point I'm wondering if there's actually going to be enough water in this brush, but we'll see. You'll find out in a minute. So first thing to do, once you've put all the tape on and you've folded all the edges over, is just to flood your canvas, or your paper in this case, with water, and then just start slapping some bits of pigment on there, some bits of watercolour paint, by wetting your brush and rubbing it around on the watercolours and then sort of tapping it onto the page. I've sped this up because I spend quite a long time on this, just sort of playing with the paint, and I'd recommend you do something similar. Just enjoy it and play around with it. You can see I grabbed a little tissue at the end there and just sort of dabbing at the bits where there was a bit too much purple at the bottom. Anyway, so I'll let that dry for a couple of minutes, just a little bit, so that I can do the same sort of thing at the bottom. The first thing we need to do is add some shadows. So I'm going to use the same technique. I'm just going to paint water where I want the paint to go. And it's at this point that that brush ran out of water. Rather than fill it up, luckily I had some spares on hand. So just squeeze a little bit of water out of my brush and paint the shadow. I'm imagining that the shadow is coming from basically where that yellow glow is behind the trees there. So the angle on all my shadows is going to be slightly different. And I'm just mixing up some colours. I started off with blacks, but I actually ended up trying to make it a little bit softer, because black can make things go a bit harsh and a bit grey. I've ended up actually using a bit more sort of blue and purple in the background, rather in the shadows rather, which you'll see in a minute. So you can see the angle of those shadows was slightly different. I just sort of draw an imaginary line when I'm doing it and think, if I'm drawing a line from the sun to that tree, where would that line go? And you can sort of work out where the shadows are going to go. It doesn't matter too much. You could even just draw them all going straight down the page if you want, if that's easier. This way just adds a little bit more sort of 3D effect to it. So you can see I sort of recolored them purple a little bit. Again, with watercolors, you can just add more water over the top, get your cloth, dab it on. You can keep playing with it quite a bit, especially if you've got nice thick paper. If you want thinner paper, just be a bit careful about adding too much water because you can rip it. Then I just thought I'd add a little tiny bit of colour onto the background. So the land here, the ground, I'm sort of assuming was snow. So it's white, but obviously snow is not really white. It has all the reflections from the sky and the landscape, and it's got shadows on it. So I just added smidges of yellow and orange near to where the sun was flowing across it, and some purple as like a shading colour towards the foreground, towards where we are. Yeah, and that was that. And then we left that to dry, completely dry. If you're feeling impatient, ask an adult to get a hairdryer. It's a good way of drying out watercolours because you just want the water to evaporate. Yeah, and then peeling the tape off. Be very, very careful. Take your time. There's nothing worse than when I see kids peel tape off and they just whoosh, rip it straight off and the whole page tears. It's really frustrating, especially if you spent a long time making a nice image. So yeah, take your time. I know I sped that up so it looks like I did it really fast, but I did take my time pulling that off. Now, we're going to add the texture of the bark of the trees, those interesting little black lines that you get across silver birch trees. And to do that, we're going to use a bit of black paint and a little bit of card. It's just corrugated card that you'd find in packaging from your Amazon packages or anything. Cut a little slip off like that, something that's comfortable for you to hold. You want it to be nice and straight. Probably this bit I used a little bit too thin because it bent a bit too easily. Slightly thicker stuff might be better. I've used acrylic paint, I just showed it on the camera there, but probably actually something that's a little bit thinner, like poster paint, ready mix paint would be better. You just want a little line of it that's big enough for your strip of card, so that when you dip your card into it, it completely covers that one edge that you dip in. And then the technique you're going to use, I'm just showing here, you press it on and you flick. You hold it at an angle, so 45 degrees, so not straight up. Angle it down a bit and then pressing with good pressure, flick it across the page. I'm going to keep showing you here. So I dip it in. I do recommend you get a little test page like this. Have a little practice. Once you dip it in, tap most of it off because you don't want to get big blobby smeary bits of paint all over. So here we go. Carefully place it on, angle it, you see it's not angled straight up, and then give it a little flick and you get this nice little shading effect. Take your time with this. You do want to be as accurate as you can, as careful as you can, because you don't want this shading effect anywhere than on the tree you're working on. Think about where the paint is on your little tool, because you see there's a little section at the bottom there of this tree that I haven't quite managed to get, and I'll have to come back to that in a minute. Feel free to turn your paper around. I'm only doing it this way so you don't keep seeing me turn it upside down, but if I was doing it without a camera on, I'd be turning this piece of paper all over the place just to make it as easy for myself as possible. So you see I just need to touch up that little section, so I'm just checking on my my little bit of card where the paint is, and I'm only applying pressure where I needed it there. You'll get the hang of it. If you're not sure how to do it, just keep practicing. Get a little piece of paper at the side and work out where the paint is. Try and get that pressure right. Line it up neatly and little flick. So you're not dragging it all the way across. You're not slowly doing it. You're just giving it a nice little quick flick with good pressure. And we're not going all the way across either. We're only just adding a little bit of shading, mostly at the edge, and then hopefully we pick up these little strands that go across just to add a bit of texture. And we don't worry too much if we don't do it the same every time, because the trees don't look all the same. In fact, we want them to be a little bit different. So just remember, pick up your paint, tap it off the excess, carefully place it on the edge of the tree and flick, and repeat. Keep picking up more paint when you need it, and be really careful with those edges. Now, this bit's interesting because I've got a tree behind this other tree, and I don't want the lines to look confusing. I don't want to make it look like the trees are transparent and you can see both at the same time, if that makes sense. So just be a bit careful if you do this, that you only add the background tree's texture where you can see it. You don't want it to overlap the tree in front. I hope that makes sense. There we go, so that's the last section. You can see I'm just applying pressure carefully with the bit of cardboard, taking my time, and there we have it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you get a chance to try it out. Let me know if you do. Please send it to me, that would be great. See you soon.